South camera's like, wow, that's a busy map, isn't it?
We got a lot going on.
A lot going on, and significant weather. Not just pretty colors, but like impactful stuff.
Yes, yes, and that's actually after we finish with what we're doing today with the weather here. So we are here with you through the mid-morning hours to get you ready for all the big events in your neighborhood.
And the Weather Channel, of course, has you covered from coast to coast. And even that includes the shores of the Great Lakes, where, you know, we're not ready to run out the clock on winter just yet.
Nope.
Places like my old school, alma mater, Wisconsin-Madison.
Yeah, that's right. We're taking a look at the capital here, Wisconsin. You can see snow covering the rooftops, snow covering the grass. It is not covering the streets right now, but we're going to be talking more about that.
That's kind of a common thing this late in the season, isn't it?
But there's spots in Wisconsin that snow is covering the roads. A little slushy accumulation out there with some slippery issues, so we'll get to that. We've got spring and winter facing off, and today, especially where the snowfall rates are falling at a faster clip. And we've got millions of people starting their Friday off with snowfall. In Madison, Wisconsin, a winter storm has been blasting the town all morning long, and that's where we find meteorologist Felicia Combs braving the cold for us this morning. You know, Felicia, it looks cold out there. It actually looks colder than I feel like it has all winter here.
Knew we were going to see some of those higher snowfall totals. So, Jen, I'll be excited to see what they actually do get in Milwaukee, where it's been snowing harder for a while, or down in Rockford, Illinois, where it's been snowing pretty hard for at least an hour or two now.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, that's the case with most snowstorms. There's always that sweet spot that ends up getting the bigger snowfall totals. When it comes to your snow, though, Felicia, I'm looking at your roads. They actually look a little slippery with that slush on there. Have you seen any issues or people having any problems driving in that?
You've seen it on the sidewalks, but not the roadways. And Jen, they don't actually plow. The city of Madison doesn't plow until you see 3 inches of snow adding up on the road, or you're toward the end of the storm. So I don't know if we're going to even see that, because it's much more slushy than anything. Jen, I think the problem might be tomorrow, when all of these puddles of slush refreeze with that very, very cold temperatures building in.
Yeah, I think so too, Felicia. Here, very good point out there. Thanks again for being there in the cold and snow this morning. We'll be checking back in with Felicia. We also want to show you what else we're dealing with out here, because this system moves through Michigan. It moves into the Northeast. It brings us snow in a big way, actually, across New England. And we've actually got 2 systems that are going to play here a role in bringing us the Northeast snow. System number 1 that Felicia was just talking about. System number 2 that Greg was talking about, bringing rain and storms to the south. Both of these are going to be impacting the East Coast. And so we will be watching as we get into the weekend, well, really into tonight and then tomorrow, snowfall with winter storm warning level criteria, especially up in northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, into Maine. That's where we could be getting more than a foot of snowfall. There's another issue, though, in that we may see some freezing rain, and that's most likely overnight tonight into early tomorrow. And there's a zone of that out there across western Massachusetts, down into the Capital District and southward here into near Poughkeepsie. We've got that chance of freezing rain, which could potentially be damaging, and we've got that risk again continue up into Maine as well. So in terms of what, you know, the level that we're looking at here, that damaging 1/4 of an inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch of ice could cause some tree damage, could cause numerous power outages, and power outages are something we're very concerned about with this storm, not just because of the ice, but also because the snowfall that we see is going to be a very heavy, wet snow, common in the springtime, but especially with this system because it has so much moisture. The rain, too, is going to be quite heavy. In places in Boston could see some flooding because of that. There's a flood watch up. And when you look at that snowfall that's coming on in, again, it could be adding up pretty significantly here. I want to give you a quick look at that total, where we've got a widespread area that will get more than a foot of snow all through northern New England. Greg?
Yeah, you know, this is like
that we're going to be tracking. And so just look at where we are right now. This is the snow that is so far fallen from our latest winter storm that is affecting us in the Midwest. I mean, large areas that got more than 5 or 6 inches of snow in South and North Dakota, in Minnesota, also here into eastern Wisconsin. So now we bring in another system on top of this, and you can actually see it. It's a bigger one. So right now we got a clipper-like system that's coming right through the upper Midwest here. I want to circle that for you. And then to give you a sense of what's next, this guy over the Pacific right now, this is going to be swinging in, and the energy from that spreading out as we get into the weekend here into the Midwest. This becomes our next weather maker, and that's the reason why these winter storm watches are up. Montana, North and South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin. You've got winter storm watches for the Saturday to Tuesday time frame for the next winter storm, which we've named Winter Storm Sawyer already, because anticipating a lot of winter storm warnings to come out of this. So upper level energy dig digs in. This is the Sunday forecast. It swings in, spreads out. It's going to bring snow into parts of the Great Basin, into Utah, into Colorado. And, you know, all the while, temperatures are cold here. Billings, Bismarck, Sioux Falls, all going to be in the 20s and 30s. Minnesota, too. So we'll have the cold air in place here. That's key. What we really were lacking with so many of the storms this winter. Now, let's track that and the moisture coming in out ahead of it, because this will be a very spring-like storm. And Greg is going to talk about the spring-like weather in terms of the severe on the southern side of this. But on the northern side of this, all this moisture is coming in and overrunning that cold air. So we've got snow in the forecast. And we'll watch for that to start Sunday. Then on Monday, we watch the low itself on the move, likely strengthening. And then we start to watch for that sweet spot snow. That's usually the more intense snowfall rates that can really add up. And we'll watch for that somewhere perhaps into western Minnesota, into South Dakota. Large area that could see some pretty heavy snow likely. This is the Saturday to Tuesday time frame. And just a real quick look at to time it out for you. I mean, by Sunday, be ready for conditions to go downhill. And this could affect your travel into Monday and even Tuesday of next week, Greg.
Well, Jen, we're getting
Unforgettable experience, and getting an unobstructed view of the sun's corona in the moment depends entirely on the weather. Meteorologist Alex Wilson got the perfect ingredients in Jackson Hole, Wyoming back in 2017. Here's a look back at how that event changed the way she feels about space, presented by Bristol Myers Squibb. If you can't see the eclipse where you live, you can tune into the Weather Channel on April the 8th. We will have several live crews spread out across the zone of totality, bringing you live views and expert analysis as the moon passes between the Earth and the sun. And even if you're not in the path of totality, you'll get a partial. So everybody will be in this together, Greg.
Everybody wins. Jen, unfortunately, we're not.
Much as I love a good beach day,
Yeah.
Today's not the day. No. You know, we've got a lot of spots in the south and southeast with storms and rain, going to keep those beach bags parked right at the door.
And some of these storms could even be severe. We're talking gusty winds, heavy rain. Can't rule out the possibility of a tornado. We do have a tornado across parts of South Florida later on this afternoon. And on top of that, places like Key Largo are also under a flood watch.
Yeah, so let's get to it. We'll show you what's going on out here as we take a look at first the water vapor. And that really allows you to see where the flare-up of moisture is, which happens to be where thunderstorms are.
Yeah, mostly over the water for now. That's where the most unstable air is. But I think later on this afternoon in South Florida and across parts of the I-10 corridor, the atmosphere will begin to destabilize a little bit and allow some big storms to develop, even though they're not there just yet.
Yeah, but it is raining. Fort Myers and Naples, we've got rain falling right now. It's south of Tampa, almost really south of Bradenton and Sarasota. But we've got rain out there stretching all the way across the Sunshine State, all the way over to the East Coast from Daytona down through Vero Beach.
Yep, and all the lightning for the most part now is still over the water. But we mentioned, as Jen was talking about, it is raining, and the lightning strikes will probably begin to increase on the inland side of it eventually over the coming hours. But that is also separate from what's happening farther to the north along the northern Gulf Coast, where we have a chance for severe weather later on today.
We got to watch for that. Mobile, Pensacola, Panama City. Your spring breakers, heads up here. We could have thunderstorms, and that possibility of severe weather brings with it all the hazards. You know, in South Florida, we may even see a few tornadoes. It's possible, isolated.
Yeah, it is. And we have the same ingredients that you look for severe weather, like, say, for example, the plains, like in Kansas, Oklahoma. Not to the same extent here in South Florida, but we've got strong winds aloft. We've got the wind shear. We have the thermodynamic environment there with the instability. That does indeed lead to some Torcon threat today.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a 3, it means severe thunderstorms are likely and a few tornadoes are possible. And there could be tornado watches. So we just want you to be prepared, know where you would go if you do need to seek shelter here. That's especially important if you're not at home, right? Maybe you're in a vacation rental. So identify your safest spot.
And one of the hallmarks of big thunderstorms over South Florida is their ability to create a lot of rain. And so, as you mentioned, we have the heavy rain in progress. Flood watches are there as well in South Florida.
So let's time it out. You know, obviously the rain has been moving in already today. There'll be more where that came from. And Greg talked about the lightning coming in. Tampa, you've escaped it so far. Not going to last all day with the dry weather.
Yeah, it's almost like there's two parts to the story, right? There's the South Florida part and then right along the I-10 corridor. And those will be moving and in tandem bringing that severe weather chance in those two areas we mentioned.
And not to mention the heavy rain threat. Charleston, looking at you. Worried about flooding, as always, for Charleston.
All right, let's head back to the northern tier where we're getting snow showers this morning across parts of, the Great Lakes region.
Yes, meteorologist Felicia Combs all bundled up in Madison, Wisconsin with the latest. Felicia, checking in on air travel. Have you seen any or heard about any issues there? It seems like we're doing a 300-acre park. It's a park for everyone, built by everyone. The community had the chance to come together to help create the public space right in the heart of the city.
It's a popular spot for families to come picnic, run, whatever, and explore the vast flower fields. Well, Kate Pierce,
Dix Park is this 380 acres, a beautiful rolling.
Really cool. I mean, we understand there's so much to see and do there. Just looking into it, there's a dog park, a chapel, a disc golf course. Tell us more about the different things people can do at the park.
Yeah, so the park really is in development, and we have
one of the biggest draws is the 5-acre sunflower field. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. So a few years
Fantastic here, and just the green space in general is an environmental benefit. Who was Dorothea Dix, and why is the park named for her?
Yeah, so this property has a
Yes, well said here. I love that so much. It's always hard to pick best in state because every state offers so much. Here, North Carolina, especially because it's a big state. So I was surprised to learn more about this park here. I'm so thrilled actually that we named it best in state. But what else would you put out there as kind of the favorites across the state?
North Carolina, follow us on social and really become a part of what this park has to offer for the future.
Excellent. Kate Pierce, Executive Director for the City of Raleigh Parks, Recreation and Cultural Resources. Thank you so much for your time today. The forest bathing, that's a thing these days. All right, now we're not leaving the Carolinas just yet. So coming up next.
Morning commute a bit. We're also keeping an eye on that next system that's going to be moving in.
Yeah, I mean, that one has a lot of potential. It's a strong storm, Felicia. Thanks for giving us the heads up on that. It's going to be more snow than what you see behind her there for a lot of spots. And maybe even strong winds that could create blizzard conditions. Is going to have a lot of energy to the south and will bring the risk of severe weather.
Yeah, this is a complicated map, but on Sunday, do watch out for the development of an area of low pressure in the high plains, the Front Range region. That's going to draw moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico. That's going to lead to enough buoyancy or instability to support severe weather in the presence of strong winds aloft.
Yeah, I mean, that's key. We'll have strong jet stream winds. I mean, all the surface features will be there. We'll see it, the cold front, the warm front, the dry line here. But when you bring in the wind energy, help as well, the moisture returning here, a lot of what you would expect to drive severe weather is going to be in place.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get initiation developing late Sunday along that dry line that Jen was talking about, probably on the western side of this region. And we may not get a lot of storms developing. This is kind of a coarse grain view. But look, Sunday evening, maybe not continuously up and down there, but the dry line will be activated. I know there'll be a lot of storm spotters out there.
Yeah, and then out ahead of the cold front in that warm sector. We'll see thunderstorms through Missouri, Arkansas, down to Texas, Louisiana. We'll be watching for all the risks. And Chicago, I mean, we've got the risk of showers and even thunderstorms all the way up to you. That warm sector is going to be, I think, pretty strong.
Yeah, and heavy rain kind of in this band will be moving through. Again, thunder and lightning anywhere along it. Probably the greatest chance, according to the Storm Prediction Center for severe weather, is along the southern part of that in, parts of the Arctic region all the way to the Gulf Coast.
Now, rainfall, you mentioned this, it could be heavy at times. Again, an open tap to the Gulf of Mexico. So we've got a widespread 1 to 2 inches of rain, maybe even 2 or 3 in maybe Mississippi or Alabama.
Yeah, and then this rain continues on, and we may even get some severe weather on Tuesday, but it's a bit too early to sort out exactly those details and where it might be. But regardless of those severe weather chances, heavy rain and flooding is already in the equation. That continues early next week.
So for a place like Dallas, we get our chance of thunderstorms ramping up, even starting on a Sunday night, but then continuing through the overnight into Monday morning. And then after that, it turns colder. This is a cold front, after all, coming through.
And it's still March, and it's going to stabilize things, and your severe weather threat will be over once that cold front moves on through. Same kind of story for Little Rock, although a bit more rain early in the period.
And right now, it looks like more rain of an issue than thunderstorms. But look, there's time to sort that out. So just want to give you the early heads up on what you can expect. I know a lot of you are just focused on planning your weekend, so we can help you do that as well for all the big events in your neighborhood.
Weather Channel has you covered from coast to coast, and that includes, of course, the shores of the Great Lakes, where we're not yet ready to run the clock out on winter, places like Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, look, I mean, just like in basketball, the weather can surprise you, right? The underdog can win, and the underdog this year was winter. Right,
kind of showing up at the last second. Where did you go? It was absent.
Yep. Here we go with the snow. And we're going to have spring and winter actually facing off in today's big deal. Blustery conditions target parts in New England where the snow is coming down. Millions of people starting their Friday off with snow. And in Madison, Wisconsin, a winter storm has been blasting the town all morning long. And that's where we find meteorologist Felicia Combs braving the cold for us this morning for a region that's used to the snow, but maybe not necessarily this year. Felicia, let's talk about what's going on for the commute. Have there been really any signs of anything changing because of the snow?
Region, especially southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, where we really have that heavy band of snow. I'd be willing to bet the roads are much worse, the visibility is much worse, and you want to give yourself some extra time.
Yeah, no, excellent point, because I think any spot that is slush like you have, and then you put heavy snow on top of it, that ends up being a pretty slippery situation here. Felicia, thank you. You know, the Midwest isn't the only place getting sprayed with spring snow. Parts of the Northeast will be getting in on the action as Winter Storm Ronnie continues into the weekend. Northeastern Maine, that could be one of the spots that could see feet of snow. I mean, we're going to be adding up. This is going to be perhaps one of our biggest storms of the season here into the Northeast as we watch our system track into that area. So let's look at the forecast, and I'll show you what we are going to be finding coming in. It's really a combination of the two systems that bring us all the potential up here. One system to the south, and Greg was talking about this with severe weather. This is the snow that Felicia is in right now here to the north. So that tracks to the northeast. And it's going to be the fact that, you know, we'll have a low pressure that taps into Atlantic moisture and brings us the potential for some heavier snow here, some bigger snowfall rates, which can really add up. Winter storm warnings are up because of that. Northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. But we also have some winter weather advisories for freezing rain. And this is going to happen overnight tonight into tomorrow. There's a large area to look at and watch for this, from Maine all the way back down through now southern New Hampshire, Vermont, western Massachusetts, even into near the Poughkeepsie area, Albany, and New York, Capital District. We've got that chance of freezing rain, and the potential is there for it to get up to damaging levels, 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch, meaning there could be some tree damage. There could be power outages, power outages because of the ice, but also because of the heavy snow farther north. So that could be a real concern this weekend. Want to make sure that you're ready for that. Keep everything charged. Make sure you have what you need to stay warm. It'll be cold as well. We've got that snowfall coming in overnight tonight into tomorrow morning, but you see this little area of pink and purple here. This is where we'll have that freezing rain potential, and it may only be for a couple of hours, but that's enough to cause some issues. Boston, for you, it's mainly rain, and it's heavy rain and, actually flooding, which is a concern there from southern New England and southbound. But when it comes to the snowfall, this could be one of our biggest of the season, looking at more than 1 foot or 1.5 feet, potentially 2 feet of snow here across some of the higher spots in Vermont, New Hampshire, up into parts of Maine. Portland, not that much, but still we could be looking at maybe 5 inches of snow. That's a possibility. And then you go over to the St. Lawrence Valley, a little bit less there, but still could be up over 5, over 8 inches of snowfall for you as well. Let's look specifically at Boston. And overnight tonight, there'll probably be everything. Some rain, some snow, maybe even some freezing rain. It's a possibility, but rain will be your main event here. And this rain could be quite heavy at times here, and again, causing some flooding concerns. And Greg, that's a concern all the way down through the mid-Atlantic.
Yeah, it is.
Into Utah, into Colorado, into the Midwest, where we just picked up snow, of course, from Winter Storm Ronnie. We saw anywhere from 4 to 5 or 6 inches of snow in South Dakota, in Minnesota. Iowa's been getting a little heavier bursts too. So that's what we have right now. Let me show you what we're about to get. We've got that system here. This little guy is not much compared to this big guy that's about to swing on into the west and then move on in here to the upper Midwest to again be another big snowmaker. And that's why the winter storm watches have been posted from Montana through the Dakotas all the way into Minnesota and Wisconsin, including Minneapolis. So winter storm watch is up. We anticipate a lot of these to become winter storm warnings. So already we have a name here, Winter Storm Sawyer. It's going to be impactful from the west coast, the western mountains, all the way through the upper Midwest. Our upper level energy starts to swing in on Sunday, and that's really when things start to transition here into the northern plains and upper Midwest. Temperatures will be cold enough, a lot of 20s and 30s out there, and we'll see the moisture once our low pressure at the surface gets going. The moisture starts to return, and now this moisture is going to be overrunning on top of the cold air. So that's the first scene of snow that we will get because of that. So we'll get snow out there across portions of South Dakota, even northern Iowa, Minnesota. Watch the track of the low. That will matter because now after we get that overrunning snow, now we start to watch for where does that sweet spot snow set up here. And the specific track of the low will matter at this point. There'll definitely be some uncertainty in exact totals, but we can give you a flavor of the kind of weather we're expecting. Heavy snow, big snowfall rates, a lot of wind, the risk for some blizzard conditions perhaps if the winds do get strong enough. I mean, we've got a large area in Minnesota that could see that here, and that's the timing for you is really Sunday into Monday and Tuesday for this area of the storm. Greg.
We're giving you
a solar eclipse is an unforgettable event, and getting an unobstructed view of the sun's corona in the moment, well, that depends entirely on the weather. Meteorologist Alex Wilson got the perfect ingredients in Jackson Hole, Wyoming back in 2017. Here's a look back at how that event changed the way she feels about space. There is something about everyone just looking up at the same time and really being involved in the same experience. Now, if you can't see the total solar eclipse where you live, tune into the Weather Channel on April the 8th. We will have several live crews spread out over the zone of totality, bringing you live views and expert analysis as the moon passes between the Earth and the sun. Now, the view will depend on the weather, Greg, and we know in the springtime, well, storms are always a good beach day. Today is not the day here for us. If you are in the south, the southeast, the storms going to keep on coming, keeping those beach bags just parked right at the door.
Yeah, you know, some of these storms could even be severe. We're talking gusty winds, maybe even a couple of tornadoes, of course, the heavy rain. This is all in sort of the theme of the forecast today, especially across South Florida.
Yeah, I know you've been monitoring the radar for that potential water spouts out there over the water. It's not a day for boating either, especially off the southwest Florida coast right now. The water vapor shows us kind of where we have that big flare-up of activity. This is where the thunderstorms are. Right
about in here, the biggest ones on the map, Jen is exactly right, are now cruising across parts of the southeastern Gulf of Mexico, moving into now parts of Florida. We have to watch out for the possibility of severe weather as they move inland.
Yeah, and again, we're monitoring the radar pretty closely because there is that possibility of water spouts. There's special marine warnings. Do not take your boat out here. It's very convective, too, with a lot of lightning.
And now we're watching some of that lightning actually move inland. Earlier today, it was mostly just rain, not thunderstorm activity over South Florida. That's changing. We're starting to see more instability work its way inland into South Florida.
And it's raining to the north, too. Already raining in Jacksonville. It's raining up towards Savannah. That's all going to lift north. There's just a lot that we're expecting here in the southeast in the next 24 hours. So obviously right now we've got those storms in South Florida. There may be severe weather, and there also might be severe storms up here in the Panhandle.
Yeah, there's like two parts to it. There's that part along the I-10 corridor in the Panhandle, especially later on today, and then there's a South Florida threat, which actually is kind of ongoing and will last for much of the day with that tornado threat, Jen.
So a 3 in the Torcon, which we have in South Florida and the Keys, means severe thunderstorms are likely, a few tornadoes are possible, and tornado watches could be issued. So know where you'd go if you do get under a warning, which means you need to take action then.
And, of course, we know we're going to have a ton of rain. You could see that on the radar. It is going to rain hard, and there is that flooding threat. South Florida is used to dealing with a lot of rain, but this is even going to cross that threshold into that flooding threat.
I know. You see it in the forecast here with multiple batches of showers and storms coming on in.
Yeah, and this forecast kind of gives you the impression that it's going to be a long day in terms of rain and maybe that threat for severe weather. South Florida again, but also here in North Florida, just along the coast, the I-10 corridor is going to be at risk for seeing big storms later.
And then I'm looking at South Carolina and North Carolina, too. There's a lot of rain coming your way. I mean, Charleston, oh, boy.
I know. And then North Carolina, Virginia, and then, of course, we know that this very same storm moves up the coast and brings us a kind of messy weekend.
It was earlier this month we got more than a month's worth of rain in one rain event. Remember that?
Yes.
The second week in March.
Yeah.
So now here we go again with that kind of rain potential. There's just a lot of moisture out here. We've got 1 to 2 inches easily. Some spots will get more up in the Carolinas. Then South Florida, I mean, 3 to 5 plus.
Plus, I know, right, with those heavy storms coming in for sure. But yeah, this is we're not done with the system. Just because it's moving off the map later on today and tonight in the southeast, it's going to continue to affect many of us farther to the north. Something to watch going forward.
Yeah,
so
it doesn't move out. It moves up.
It moves up, exactly. Right. So now let's head back to the northern tier. Totally different kind of weather. We're getting snow showers this morning in some of my old stomping grounds.
Yeah, that's right. You went to University of Wisconsin. Meteorologist Felicia Combs is in Madison, all bundled up here with the latest. Felicia, any change in kind of that intensity of snow that you've seen so far?
Special for golf fans in South Carolina. Myrtle Beach will host its first ever PGA Tour event, the Myrtle Beach Classic, and that's going to come up in May.
With all these golf courses, how is this the first ever? We're going to find out. Director of South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism, Dwayne Parrish, joins us now to talk about what makes the state's golf courses so great. Dwayne, thank you so much for joining us. Why should golfers come to South Carolina? We'll start with that.
And I love the changing conditions that being along the coast brings you. You can get the calm conditions in the morning. You get the sea breeze in the afternoon. You have to battle some of the elements with the thunderstorms in the day. Not a good thing to be on the golf course, but it changes the whole dynamic with when you're playing, and I love that aspect of it. But I have a question about some of the more popular golf courses across the state. What makes them so special?
Well, we have some very well-known ones like Kiowa, where we've hosted major championships there, like the PGA.
Yeah, the first PGA Tour event in Myrtle Beach, we were surprised about that. Although it's, once you think about it, like South Carolina is a big state. You have a lot of golf courses spread out. Can you tell us a little bit more about that event, though, taking place in Myrtle Beach?
Sure, the Myrtle Beach Classic, it's the only new event this year on the PGA.
The different varieties of courses, the coastal themes that go the inland, upstate. You get some of the hillier courses, very different conditions. Now, golf courses in general may be sort of the best thing about South Carolina, but what other things do you think deserve honorable mention?
Well, yeah, I mentioned beaches and golf.
Appreciation for everything that South Carolina offers. Dwayne Parrish, Director for South Carolina Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Thank you so much for joining us. He's right about the food. I don't think I've ever had a bad meal in South Carolina.
There you go.
From Greenville to, Charleston's food. Yeah, so
wonderful.
Good. Yes. Well, sure. Some of my favorite live shots of hers was she was out in the Hamptons, out on Long Island, in a blizzard. I mean, Felicia, you were just surrounded by swirling snow here. I think we should send you over to Minneapolis and get you back in and keep you on ice for the next couple of days here with the storm.
I actually think I'm headed somewhere next for that.
Yes.
So, Jen, you might get your wish. So I'll text you angrily later.
So that weather that Felicia is enduring right now is exactly why I love Madison, but it's exactly why I don't live there anymore.
Spring can be snowy for sure, and winter can last a long time here. But Felicia, the system that you were talking about forecasting for the weekend will have a severe side, so we're going to get to that. Have to watch out for storms. The system itself, the low pressure, as we see this forming here in the lee side of the Rockies, will bring all of the severe weather features that we see in March.
And one of those is a dry line. And I think on Sunday evening, we're going to have to watch that sort of site for the development of thunderstorms along it. Wherever it ends up being, somewhere in that zone, thunderstorms will begin to develop with a lot of strong wind aloft to tap severe weather. All hazards are in play, including a couple of tornadoes.
And when it comes to severe weather forecasting, you just look to see where are all the ingredients overlapping.
Yeah.
Well, it does happen to be right here. The dry line is here. You saw the moisture was there too. Plus, we're going to have some stronger upper level winds that will help with lift and instability in the atmosphere.
And accordingly, the Storm Prediction Center has issued this outlook for us on Sunday. This is a slight risk, but we'll see if it does get modified a little bit, slightly repositioned or maybe even added an extra layer or so because of that threat as we see it more clearly by Sunday. We'll watch those storms develop in the region.
Yeah, and to give you a sense of the timing, it'll probably be late in the day, which is actually pretty typical for this kind of dry line situation, not to mention the cold front's going to be moving into. So there'll be two features that will provide lift.
And then it picks up more rain. As these systems move eastward, they grab more moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. They become a bit more prolific in terms of rainfall, which, as you mentioned earlier, goes all the way to the Great Lakes, Chicago.
Yeah. This time, Madison, where Felicia is, will get rain. You can see it all the way up there. And, there could be some storms, but mainly south. Excuse me. I was trying to hold that in.
And then on Monday, again, with that rain and that potential cold front moving through, severe weather is indeed a possibility on Monday.
Busy couple days ahead. Well, you can stay weather aware with the TWs for how little snow they had, right? Because I don't think it's erased from the record books, but it doesn't become the main story. So I don't know how you feel about this or this that's happening right now with the snow in Wisconsin, but we are here with you through the mid-morning hours to get you ready for the big events in your neighborhood.
Yeah, the Weather Channel, of course, has you covered from coast to coast, and that includes not just the East and West Coast, but the Great Lakes. We're not ready to run out the clock on winter here in Madison, Wisconsin, where snow continues to fall.
Oh, this looks so February-like, doesn't it?
Yes, and it's almost April.
I know.
But it happens. This is what we get in the upper Midwest.
It's not unusual. This is spring.
You can't shut the door on winter in late March. You would be foolish to do that because snow and cold are in the forecast somewhere.
You would be foolish. Yeah. Well, starting off their Friday with snow. And in Madison, Wisconsin, a winter storm has been blasting the town all morning long. And that's where we find meteorologist Felicia Combs braving the cold for us this morning. For a region, it's used to snowfall. We know that it does snow well into March and maybe even April. Have you seen a lot of people out every time we've seen a shot?
And everything refreezes, because anything that's slushy tonight, as we fall into the teens by tomorrow morning, it's going to freeze.
Yeah, and as you've mentioned, there's some spots that have received 5 to 7 inches of snow in other spots in Wisconsin. And when you have slush like you have on the ground, like you have, they had that too, but now they're putting snow on top of it. That's a slippery situation here. It always catches people off guard. Be careful walking.
Yes.
Yes. Felicia, thank you. The Midwest isn't the only place getting sprayed with the spring snow. Parts of the Northeast will be getting in on the action as Winter Storm Ronnie continues into the weekend. Northeastern Maine will be one of those spots that could see feet of snow here. We're talking 1 to 2 feet, and that's on top of what fell there yesterday. You see these flakes coming down. All of a sudden, it's been snowing here in the Northeast. You had to wait to the end of winter to get it all, right? Now, we've got 2 systems. The one that Felicia is standing in up here to the north, that one is system number 1. Number 2 is what Greg was talking about. And this is important because it's actually going to move up along the coast and help bring in more moisture here to the Northeast here. And for many of you, it will be rain. But up to the north, where it'll be cold enough, we will see snow. Northern Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. We've got some significant snow with winter storm warnings up. Winter storm warnings actually extend into parts of New York State, too. Northern New York State, mainly there north of 90. Another hazard is the risk of some freezing rain, and that's tonight into tomorrow morning. It'll be a couple of hours worth of freezing rain, but it could add up to more than 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch in pockets from Maine down through western and central Massachusetts, even into New York, like around Poughkeepsie and north of there towards the Capital District. We've got that risk of a damaging ice event. 1/4 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch does that, which could create some tree damage and also can lead to power outages. So be ready for that here. Make sure you go to bed and have everything charged up before you do. We've got that risk. It starts with mainly snow later tonight. This is 10 o'clock, and we see snow moving into western New York. Then through the overnight, that's when we get that couple of hour window that we could see the freezing rain. That's the pink showing up on this map. And you notice that it does go through parts of New York State and western New Hampshire, or western Massachusetts, leading into New Hampshire and Maine. And then we get into your Saturday, and that's when a lot of that snow will be coming down. Luckily, the system is sweeping through pretty quickly, but it's energetic enough that we do have some bigger snowfall rates in the forecast, which will lead to more than 1 foot or 1.5 feet of snow. That's the purple colors. We get to pink. Now we're talking 1.5 to 2 feet of snow as a possibility from Conway all the way up into parts of Maine, including around Holton. We've got that chance. Boston itself, while you might see some snowflakes out there starting later tonight into the overnight, it's mainly rain. And rain actually that could cause flooding and maybe even power outages too, Greg, because we've got a lot of wind coming in here.
Yeah, we do. A wet and windy week.
Here at where else we saw the snow again. We picked up anywhere from 5 or 6 to even close to 8 inches of snow there. Minnesota picked up some snow. Now we're getting in Wisconsin. We've been watching that with Felicia, but we got to get ready for the next one. This little system is much more of a Clipper-like system. This is what we're dealing with right now. And you see this right here. You're like, okay, that's a little system compared to what's right now sitting off the coast of the west coast of the U.S., where we've got this energy that's going to swing in as we get through the weekend, and that becomes our next weather maker. And so that's the one that is the reason why we have winter storm watches that are up now in Montana, again, in North and South Dakota, and in Minnesota and parts of Wisconsin. As this energy moves in and we see our surface low develop here out in the Front Range and in the high plains here, that moisture that comes from the surface low will interact with this cold air. Plenty of it, 20s and 30s for high temperatures. Here comes the surface low. Here comes the moisture. You kind of know how it all works, right? You get that cyclonic flow around the low pressure here, and moisture overrunning on top of the cold air will allow for snowfall to develop in North and South Dakota, in Minnesota. But some of the heavier snowfall rates will happen when we watch the low itself track up through the Great Lakes, and we watch and track where is that sweet spot. It's north and west of the area of low pressure. It's where you get into some of the bigger snowfall rates. It definitely can create some uncertainty in forecasting because, of course, it does matter where the low tracks and where that sweet spot sets up. But we'll be watching for that somewhere in South Dakota or Minnesota. The chance for some pretty heavy snow likely here along with some strong gusty winds. And we'll see that on Sunday as things start to get underway, first with the overrunning snowfall, and then it's Sunday to Monday with that heavier snowfall rates expected here across the upper Midwest. Greg.
We're giving you a
event, getting an unexpected view of the sun's corona in the moment. Well, that depends entirely on the weather. Meteorologist Alex Wilson got the perfect ingredients in Jackson Hole, Wyoming back in 2017. Here's a look back at how that event changed the way she feels about space. It is really cool, and everyone in one space and really around the world or around the country is going to be looking up at the sky to see this. Now, if you can't see the eclipse, the total solar eclipse where you live, tune into the Weather Channel on April the 8th. We will have several live crews spread out across the zone of totality, bringing you live views and expert analysis as the moon passes between the Earth and the sun. But all of North America will see at least the partial. So, Greg, we all get to look up in some way, shape, or form and see something that's related to this.
And hopefully there's no really bad weather.
South. And, you know, as much as I love a good beach day, today is not the day here. No. If you are in either the south or the southeast, you got to, well, those beach bags are just be parked right at the door. We have too much rain to talk about.
Yeah, and some of these storms could even be severe. We're talking some gusty winds. Obviously, as you mentioned, Jen, the heavy rain, but also a threat of a tornado or two, really along the southern part of the Florida Peninsula.
We've been watching thunderstorms this morning already, and some of them with the threat of some waterspouts over the water here in the Gulf of Mexico. So we're watching this big batch of thunderstorm activity. It's now actually affecting us here at, well, actually on the east coast of the airports.
Yeah, heavy rain is extending. It's all the way from coast to coast here in southern Florida, and we're seeing more and more lightning strikes. That's not put on the map right now, but here, if you animate this, you can see what we didn't see earlier today. Is lightning inland. That tells us that we're getting a bit more unstable. Even though it's rainy and cloudy, we're still getting that flow out of the south, increasing the buoyancy.
And there's more where that came from, too. You can see how much we have over the Gulf of Mexico right now. There's another batch here, and this is worse than it looks. The radar just doesn't shoot out that far. But Tampa, get ready. We're going to have some showers and storms coming your way, and up towards the Panhandle, we've got thunderstorms in the forecast.
I know. You know, you've always said never sleep on an upper level low, right? That sounds bad. But what I'm saying is that there's an upper level circulation that is going to bring that threat of thunderstorms in North Florida, even though perhaps the greatest tornado threat is here along parts of the, I would say Alligator Alley corridor.
Yeah, I mean, that's where we have a 3. And there's a 3 on the Torcon. It means that severe thunderstorms are likely, a few tornadoes are possible, and tornado watches could be issued. The thing about the weather today will likely be waterspouts turn tornadoes if we do see them.
I think you're right. And, you know, we're starting to see, again, a bit more lightning strikes in the interior sections of South Florida. So that means the thunderstorms are getting a bit more spicy. Also includes heavy rain with a flooding threat continuing.
Yep. So watching it all come together in the forecast. Again, South Florida, you're in it right now. Tampa, get ready. Later on today, we will see it. And also, you know, up along the I-10 corridor in the Florida Panhandle from Pensacola straight to Tallahassee, get ready for rain.
There's that upper level low. You can see it spinning west over Louisiana, but out ahead of it, that little line of storms that the models are trying to spit out could bring some gusty winds and maybe some isolated severe right along that region this evening.
Yeah, not to mention all the rain, the rush hour home in Atlanta, Greenville, Charlotte, all going to be wet. Charleston, a very wet night ahead for you here, especially once you get into after about 9-10 o'clock.
All right. Well, you know what? I kind of want to head back to the northern tier, shall we?
Yeah.
Because it's a totally different variety of weather. We're talking about snow and cold, not so unusual in Wisconsin, for example, which is where we're getting some snow showers.
And that's our meteorologist, Felicia Combs, is all bundled up here in Madison, Wisconsin with the latest. Felicia, I was just looking at some of the snow totals. Honestly, Madison is one of the lower ones with 1 to 3 inches. There's some... I learned so much because I never would have known about this park, actually, North Carolina, who are some of the details about the golf courses. And earlier on the show, we talked with both states' departments of Parks and Recreation to find out what makes each spot so special. Why should golfers come to South Carolina? We'll start with that. I mean, both states have a lot to offer.
They do, and both states have that sort of change in the environment from the coastal feel all the way west to the mountains. It's amazing.
I mean, you go upstate in South Carolina, you're practically in the mountains, right? I mean, there's a lot of changes in both states. Every Friday we do this. Here we talk about what's best in state, and we want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and we highlight the top spot in all 50 states using the hashtag Best in State to share the best thing about yours. Now, coming up, we'll be visiting, well, let's see, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York. How about that? A lot of good northeastern cities.
So we need your votes here. Yeah, let us know what you think is best in state, because honestly, your answers are driving a lot of these here as we start to dig into what's best in state across the U.S. Let's show you, Wimby, what's not best right now is the weather.
Right. Let me get out of the way of Florida here, because there's a lot of rain coming in to South Florida right now, and there's some severe weather threat continuing across the region because we've got strong winds aloft. We've got all the ingredients for it kind of localized in South Florida.
Yeah, we do have rain, though, too, that's now moving up from Jacksonville. You can see up I-95 all the way to Savannah. It's a wet ride. Charleston, here comes the rain. It's coming in, and some of the really heavy stuff coming in later tonight.
Yeah, from the south suburbs of Atlanta through Macon, Georgia. I know Alex will be proud of that. We're seeing some rain, but also right now, South Florida, a lot of lightning now, interior sections of Florida, something we didn't see earlier today.
And, you know, there's some heavier rainfall rates here, so we're going to have to stay vigilant on if there's any flooding or flash flooding with this kind of rain. You know, look, sandy soil in Florida drains well, but there's so much pavement that doesn't drain.
Right, and that's one area that we're looking at for more rain, especially later on today. But also, look at this. Some of the models are spitting out another group of thunderstorms developing over the I-10 corridor, Tallahassee, all the way through parts of Jacksonville, perhaps. This is where the upper level low, you can see it spinning right here, Jen.
I know.
Right in there. As it moves eastbound, ahead of it, we could see that thunderstorm threat.
It's also very spread out. So, you know, the actual core of the low is back here, creating showers over southern Alabama. And meanwhile, you've got all this rain in South Florida. This is tonight. You've got all this rain coming into South Carolina, and tomorrow morning it's lifting up into North Carolina.
And a messy beginning to the week, and unfortunately across parts of the Carolinas, as we mentioned. We start to clear things out, we think, from west to east later on Saturday, but not before a lot of rain is deposited.
And remember, I never trust these upper level lows. They take some time to actually kind of work themselves out. So even tomorrow, there's still a few showers left behind. It's not, you know, done with the rain once the heavy stuff moves through tonight. 1 to 2 inches of rain. A lot of this will be falling today and tonight, though, across the southeast.
Yeah, and, you know, it's spring. We could use it, of course. We don't want a whole lot that could cause some flooding, but some of these areas, a little bit, not such a bad thing. But then it moves up the coast.
Right. So this low that we're tracking through the southeast. Now, this one doesn't go out to sea. It actually goes up along the coast. At the same time, our front, the same one that's causing the snow in Wisconsin that we've been showing you all day, same time as that one comes here all the way to the coast.
I know, right? We're going to deal with, I think, also an onshore wind in some places, so there'll be some coastal flooding in addition to the heavy rain and the inland flood threat, which is outlined here with this flood watch.
Yeah, we're watching that here through this entire zone overnight tonight into tomorrow. Tomorrow will actually be the rainiest of the days. Well, you can stay weather aware with Isha. But look, you're talking about that next storm coming in, and it could certainly be bigger than what we've seen from this first one. And it's going to have two sides to it, a severe side and a snowy side.
So I lived in Wisconsin for about a decade, right? And it was about this time of year when many of us were thinking, when the heck is winter going to end? Aren't we done with this? But so often that's not the case. And what Felicia is experiencing now in Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, is going to be even repeated to a greater extent farther to the northwest with another big storm system that you mentioned coming in, a winter one.
And so take a look at this. This is not snow. At the southern side of our next system that will have a severe side to it. And you know, this one with the surface low, the cold front, the warm front, the dry line, it's just got all the features that you would look for in the springtime for potential severe weather.
The feature to me that stands out is this dry line. I think that's going to be a place where we're going to see the initiation of thunderstorms late on Sunday. We're going to have enough fuel, not a high end amount, but enough in the presence of some strong wind shear to get us that severe weather in the plains.
Yes, and that area happens to be in Oklahoma, in Kansas. That'll be the spot that maybe most of the ingredients are coming together, but there's a chance all the way down into northern Texas, including Dallas, Abilene, San Angelo, all in that zone.
There's mostly a wind and hail threat, but some tornado threat does exist. We're going to have a lot of storm spotters out there in the plains, or there will be a lot of them for sure. So you're going to want to tune in to watch the developments as they take place Sunday night and on into Monday, too.
Yeah, I mean, thunderstorms and even just rain, though, continuing into Monday as a threat here, which could be heavy at times. Remember, we're going to have a tap into that Gulf of Mexico moisture, so that comes in, bringing that threat for some heavier rainfall amounts. New Orleans again, Jackson again, Memphis again.
Severe weather outlook issued by the Storm Prediction Center for us on Monday. Again, as mentioned, there'll be more of a tap of the Gulf of Mexico, so perhaps a heavy rain threat as well will continue across the region. If you look at the numbers coming out, 2 to 3 inches of rain. How about that?
Yeah, yet again here, and this, on the heels of what we're getting today, so we're not getting a lot of breaks in between rainfall events. Again, 2 to 3 inches, maybe Mississippi right now, that's centered as to where we'll see some of the heavier rainfall totals, but it's all about the rainfall rates causing flash flooding, and even if you only get an inch, if you get an inch in a half hour, that could cause some problems.
Yep, which is why we have that flash flooding threat from Monday on into Tuesday, and maybe it extends farther to the east on Tuesday as well and into early Wednesday. This is a system that's going to bring its rain from west to east effectively.
Dallas, your storms come in Saturday night. We'll watch for the risk of maybe some severe weather. It's going to be quite windy too leading into this, strong southerly wind, and then the front comes through. I mean, it's a cold front, so we drop temperatures.
We do. Colder and drier and more stable air. The severe weather threat is over once that cold front moves through. May not be until late Monday in Little Rock.
Yeah, and right now looking mainly like rain for you.
Right.
Well, let's get into the out there where some of the big events happen.